some sort of workout strategy where they're going through, okay, you're going to go hire one of these 3 people and you're going to go out and doing that. If we take it back and the bank has responsibility, then it's going to have to be, that entity's going to have to be vetted through a preferred contract.
And as the court, we usually have a receiver involved. So we let the receiver make those kinds of decisions and justify it to us. We don't have a preferred list, but we usually go with what our receiver feels comfortable dealing with because he's our action point with the court.
But at that point, the receiver has to be able to justify it.
Well, of course.
Yeah.
So you gotta follow the basic rules. Don't embarrass the judge. That's rule number 1.
That's usually rule number 1. Don't embarrass the judge.
We're sensitive people.
Dave, can you touch on the process that folks would go through to the extent that you're going to, vet a vendor and what they could expect or how they would begin that process if they wanted to do that? From a general sense, not necessarily just your bank.
Just our bank. So each one of the banks now have employed a purchasing or a vendor management system or people in place. And what the process is typically is that if we, and I'll use law firms as an example, we are using 30 or 40 different law firms, they're going to want to say what are they using it for and go through that process. But it's really, that process, you probably need to be doing consistent business with that bank, and then they're going to go through the process. I don't know if there's a place where you can actually go apply to it, but you'd have to probably reach out to that bank and have them, a person at that bank, and say, call Dave Peura, we're an auctioneer, we want to do your auction, stuff, can I get on your vendor approved list? And that's the process.
I know a lot of my clients have a vendor portal, so you can submit the information electronically, and the information requested varies by institution, but it's going to be your basic corporate documents, bios, maybe some tax returns, that kind of thing.
Anybody want to? Go ahead.
Question. When I started this business in 2009, for the next 3 years, I primarily focused on small and middle market banks as far as commercial and residential REOs. And the problem I had was that those asset managers, quite frankly, wouldn't sell anything because it would put them out of a job. How is that situation now?
My observation, at least with my clients, is there is pressure to realize on the collateral. So it's the opposite issue. And my job and your job is to maximize the value of that collateral. So I have not run into that problem. The other thing, with increased bank regulation, you can't just sit on non-performing loans anymore. The regulators are going to be all over you. So the thing I run into more, especially in smaller communities, is not wanting to be the bad guy. And I've had to say, you know what? You're a publicly owned institution. You have shareholders. If somehow people figure out that you are not collecting your loans and you are not liquidating your collateral when it's important to do so, you're going to have a shareholder uprising. So fortunately, I've had the opposite issue. And a lot of those people, to comment about your bank, are incented from a compensation standpoint to move the loans through.
Yeah, I think in the smaller banks, you may have that problem. The larger banks, if they're not performing and doing it, they're moving on. At least in my group, they would be.
In my experience, and this would have to be one of the biggest banks in the world, their attitude was, we got more money than God, we'll wait.
Well, there was a period of time, and you got into a period of time in 2010, 11, 12, where you had a lot of residential real estate lots, single-family homes, small single-use commercial, basically restaurants, single-use sort of buildings that came into their portfolios. When you got to some of the residential real estate, you started getting later in the cycle, probably 2011, 2012, the market started turning in real estate. If you run through, I believe, a 5 to 7 year sort of cycle, which kind of puts where are you today on that cycle, and was that cycle come off, that what we saw and we started holding on to is, wait a minute, that lot I'm selling for $20,000 today in an auction, if I hold it for 2 years, I can sell it in 60 or 80. So we were buying time with our borrowers to saying, you're not going to liquidate it. You're just going to hold it. You're going to do what you're going to say. We had a forbearance agreement that said that. Smart attorneys like Paulie wrote them up and he said, you're going to do all this fine stuff for us. And then at some point, you're going to go and we're going to start marketing. And that turned out for our particular group, and when I was running real estate back then, the small market stuff, that worked out pretty well for us because we were able to then sell it. It's not just the single lot. The single lot wasn't worth it, but when you had 60, 70 lots in a big development, that helped out.
Yeah, that particular lender, their commercial REO portfolio was $11.5 billion. Good bank.
I think what I'm seeing from the auctioneer side, working with the banks, is that the smaller loans, or I'm calling smaller loans, say $500,000, maybe $750,000, and that could be single asset or multi-asset. They're coming in and they're saying, let's say for the past 18 to 24 months, we know you have a process, we know you're going to go through X, Y, Z, you're going to do this kind of advertising, it's going to take this long, you're going to saturate the market with this, you're going to have a sign, you're going to have a press release, you're going to go through all the things that you learn in CAI, AARE, AML, all the sessions here. And if you do that, which we expect you to do, then on the back end of this, you should be getting market value. So I've stopped really worrying about, on the front end, when we're talking about what the minimum is going to be. To me, it's irrelevant, because historically, over the past 24 months, every time you've gone through the process, and they've agreed with you what the process is going to be, 100% of the time on the back end, they've gone ahead and let the property go, regardless of what they wanted before they
You were talking earlier about time, regulations, and non-performing assets or REOs sitting on the books for a period of time. So I guess my question is that period of time, is it regulatory driven? Is it shareholder driven? Is it policy driven? In other words, does one lending institution say, look, after 48 months on the books, this thing has got to be sold, while another one may say it's 12 months? And in those time frames, are they coming just from a regulatory standpoint, or are they coming from a policy standpoint?
So there's two regulatory qualifications to really exciting stuff here. You can have a held for investment side of the book, and you can have a held for sale side of the book. There's no specific regulation that says that you can't hold a particular piece in a workout scenario. Now, if it's gone to REO, there's a 5-year time frame, and that's where they move in there. If it's in a workout and it moves from held from investment to held for sale, and there's processes and accounting rules that describe that, and it's really accounting driven. And so it says you move to held for sale, then it's the same type of rule in real estate, or if they had a piece of REO where it's got to sell in 5 years, or you have to write the asset down.
So you don't have to start writing it down until that 5-year period?
No.
There's write down a little bit at a time.
So there's regulations that say you have to, when you're going to recognize a loss, you have to recognize it in a certain order. So if I recognize, it doesn't matter if I take it January 1st or March 31st, as long as I recognize it in that quarter. So that's why you see people go to the banks going like, hey, it's the end of the quarter, or it's the end of the year. That's an exciting time because they're looking at this going like, wait a minute, I got to get this off my books. I got to take this right down, so I might as well sell it or get what I can get out of it to do that. So those time crunches come.
The other factor that may come into play is the concentration of banks' loans in a certain sector. And they could have a regulator come in and say, hey bank, you are overweight in healthcare, or you are overweight in tech for your overall size of the economy, and that may affect the speed with which something is written down and sold.
Sure, and the government came in January or October through January of 2000, October 15th to January 16th. And it was all in the papers. It said banks, you're going to write down all or you're going to classify all your oil reserve-based lending, mid-pipe, midstream lending, upstream lending. You're going to classify all those loans, and here's the ones you're going to do that. So they came in and do that. So that part of it. But an individual bank will have a policy. Most banks will have. We do. A period of time of when you want to move it. There's no definite hard time. You're still making a decision that's hopefully a bright financial decision. But even when you get in with the accounting rules and you look at it as an investor, as a banker, and go like, well, this may not spread move the world, but from a accrual-based and a cash-based difference, banks are all accrual-based and cash. You can make your decision. You have to stand back and stuff. I just think that was really smart. That really doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
while we're getting the mic back there, Dave, you touched on something in Unit 2, Polly, talking about the cycle and end of the year being important and quarterly being important, and somehow the bank officers are getting bonus for compensating based on closing number of files and bringing in money within quarters. How does that type of thing play into the decision making?
It makes it hellish. Because your calendar, and you're in, I think one of the angriest I ever got at a client, Judge Holbrook witnessed this, wasn't you? Telling me we had to sell a property in a certain quarter for her bonus. I don't create the market. I can do the best I can, and I look to great people like you to help create the market, but I can't wave my magic wand and make obscure assets sell. So those incentive guidelines can be very hellish for people like me, so don't impose them. It wasn't him.
She tried to push her into the seating benches there in the courtroom to get rid of her, because I was not very happy with her responses at that time.
I can tell you though, from a real world, being the auctioneer, being the broker, being the receiver standpoint, if you do this for a living, you start doing more of it. Your Q4 is going to be really, really busy. Your Q1 is going to be not very busy at all. Half of Q2 is not going to be very busy. Q3 is going to be busy. Q4 is going to be busy. That cycle. In 20 years, that's been the same thing. Usually, I'll come to conference and show, and I'll have very, very little going on just because of where we are in the cycle. So, trying to get stuff done by the end of the year. And then, if you're selling, say if I have a quarter, if I have a sale at the end of a quarter, they want to make sure I process the funds through that sale, as opposed to have them sitting in my escrow account, processing them out, funding them out. And that's very important. And having an understanding of that, try not to sell short to be a timeline, but processing the money out is important for a lot of bank officers.
Well, the revenue recognition part is key, because a lot of times I'll say to my client, if we're near the end of a month or a quarter, when do you want this income? Because there are times they do want to defer the recognition of income, and that affects your timing, so be sensitive to that.
Yeah, there's a lot that can flow into it. Again, going back to make some decisions that you're going to make. Go ahead and take it in the fourth quarter, take it in the second quarter, take it in the third quarter. And they're really sort of optional situations where you get into, so do I need to do it now, or do you need to do it later? Because sometimes the bank, and you get in any given quarter, we're going to take losses. We take losses every quarter. You hear banks talk about, here's our net charge-offs, whether it's in commercial, whether it's in consumer cards, or whatever it's in. You're going to take losses that are going to happen anyway, right? And so you're going to run, all public companies want to report to the streets on a consistent basis on what they're doing, and they're going to, maybe this quarter I didn't have so many non-optional losses, and then maybe I can take some more and I can go ahead and move this asset. Because if I get rid of this non-performing asset, it'll release reserves, and that helps the bank and its capital structure.
Basically, just a balancing act.
Well, I think the key is you are going to look more sophisticated than you already are, to a banker if you say, hey, is there a revenue recognition issue here that affects the timing of the disposition of the asset? And I think they're going to appreciate you having that insight and recognizing that they have certain needs or wants in a balance sheet standpoint.
Hopefully that workout officer or REO person is working with you and can give you some guidance. Does it make sense for you to have it in second quarter or third quarter? And there may be reasons why assets sell differently in the second and third quarter. And it may make sense for them to hold it, may not. They may be. Hopefully it's not their bonus, because the government gets a little excited about that for regulatory purposes and compliance things, so they get a little excited about that. So I've always told my people, if that's you're making that decision, then you didn't do your job well enough earlier on, and you need to move on.
To pick up on what you were saying, our experience has been that our relationship with the lender and our performance carry us a long way.
I agree with that.
Anyway, the other aspect is that we have found that a lot of this with the lender is driven first by the Fed, then by the chief credit officer or the credit committee. And so we need to get to know those people and develop a relationship with them. And it has proven to be successful in our case.
Yeah, and I'm going to guess what those credit officers and credit committees were all talking about are when and if and when we want to take losses, or when we want to recognize the income and revenue to it. And then they're going to get the credit. I always like to have the credit people. I make fun of them because they sit in this ivory tower, sitting in this room making these decisions and not realizing they're talking to people like, you people, and you go like, hey, this thing's going to sell for $4 million. It's not going to sell for 10, right? That's the reality of it. But you go back to them and they say, well, it's only going to sell for 4. They go, no, we need 6. Well, where's the magic?
If you've got a relationship, you can tell them that and they'll at least consider what you're saying.
I agree. So if you worked with that particular institution, that loan officer, and you're consistent, the people that have worked for us, whether they're, you go to appraisers who are coming back and tell you a value, whether it's a broker, an auctioneer, and you're consistently telling you that, no, you're not going to get this. That Jim, the auctioneer, or John, or Susie is telling us, this is all we think we're going to get. And that sometimes helps the sale process or helps move that along.
Sorry, I was counting attendees. You guys had touched on relationships and specialists and understanding, having an understanding of your business and what you guys need in order to do your job. Can you talk about what you look for in the auctioneer and the vendor? How well is the vendor easier chosen if they understand your business as well as understanding theirs, or are you just looking for the best auctioneer that doesn't necessarily need to understand bank and law and things like that? What matters most?
What matters most is you're bringing the most value you can to the banker, and the individual officer that you're working with. You're working with the banker, you're really working with the officer, and how much value you can bring to them. So your knowledge of a receivership situation, your knowledge of going through the court process, knowing who the judge is that you're about to go work for, or through receivership, and understand what he is or she is normally going to approve or allow to have happen in a scenario, of providing that value. The other part, Rich, your question, I think, is going towards specialization of what you have. And when we get into, we make loans sometimes. I scratch my head and I don't know what we just did. And you sit there and I have other words. And what becomes very interesting is, and we get into an situation of liquidation. That situation of liquidation, I'm looking for a specialty. Have you moved printing presses? Have you moved some sort of intellectual property? Do you have familiarity with hospital beds? Or, I'm just trying to think of some stuff, eyeball stuff. Have you moved, fracking trucks? Have you dealt with, aggregate from sand moving and frack, stuff, which we've dealt with recently, or saltwater disposable wells, right? And they have value. They're holes in the ground. But anyway, when you're looking for people that have that experience, that helps. But I think helping and understanding the process, our process, not only understanding that there are financial requirements or there's financial goals and things that we have to balance in between quarters, in between years, and those opportunities, and being sensitive to that and recognizing those. And then recognizing that we do have processes and policies and procedures that we go through, and some of which complete brain damage. But the government says we have to go through that brain damage.
Getting back to Dave's point, the bottom line is maximizing the value of the collateral. So how do you do that? I have sold assets over the last 2 years, ranging from commercial real estate to thoroughbred racehorses to a fleet of school buses. I also handled the liquidation of the IDG jewelry chain here in Columbus. And because that was so specialized, we brought in a nationwide jewelry liquidation company. So it may not be your location, it may be your expertise, even if you're not from here. The other key is familiarizing yourself with the court process. The first thing I do when we're preparing a lawsuit is look at the local rules for that county and look at the judge's website if he has any information about how he runs his courtroom, because he deserves the respect to know that I'm coming in prepared. I'm asking for his time, and I'm asking him for something from my client. So I need to be ready. So you don't necessarily have to be doing those things, but if you are the receiver, or you need to make sure the lawyer who's getting this process through is familiar. The other thing you need to be familiar with are hidden liens or liens that are not the obvious UCC filing kind of lien or mortgage. I learned the hard way in selling a, what's it called, a fleet, a flock, what are thoroughbreds? What's a group of? It's not a gaggle. Anyway, a herd of thoroughbreds in the states that are big horse breeding states, Kentucky and Virginia. Everyone who touches a horse literally gets a lien that is not reported for their unpaid, whether it's veterinary, grooming.
What's the last triple crown one? We own it.
Good for you. So making sure your attorney
Peura, what was his name, Peura?
is familiar with those local practices that, again, those liens impacted the value of the collateral. We thought we had collateral worth this much, and we have a bunch of horses who were, good Lord, prima donnas, who were worth something down here.
Mike, what do you think? I mean, there's the court's perspective on this.
Well, as a court's perspective, Polly's right. Excuse me. It helps when I have lawyers come to me that know what I want to see. And Polly will tell you, I'm the first to ask a question if I don't understand. So, and understand, we have busy dockets. I get 150 new cases a month. So we stay busy. So the better that you can bring it to me information-wise and let me know. I would have never, we have an obligation to sell at a certain price. And after several long discussions, I'm a big fan of open bids, because I think it does produce more money. But that's just me. So you've got in my court 17 judges, so she has to know 17 different personalities. And I'm probably one of the more easygoing ones, but you've got a few that are a little anal retentive, so to speak. I can say that because I don't have to practice in front of them. But, it matters what your audience you're dealing with. So the better I feel more comfortable with. There's one receiver in Franklin County I can't stand. You already know who it is.
Sorry, guys.
It's not rich. Okay? But, I can't stand them. That's just the way it is. So, and unfortunately, I'm the one on the front page of the dispatch if something goes south.
So then that would, I think we're going to segue into pet peeves and things, because there are a lot of questions about that. But are you saying, when folks come in, so we're coming in, we're doing a sale, the reporting has to be straight, you need to have the paperwork, you need to have the explanation of what happened and why, or what's going to happen and why you're going to do it, so you can.
Especially like in areas of advertising, if you're going to sell something, if you're not going to advertise, you don't do me any good. So I got to know what your plan is for advertising. I want to know the timeline of it, because I've got lawyers to answer to on it. I want to make sure that everything's in place for it to go. When we did the one thing, that auction went so smoothly.
The personal property.
The personal property, I wanted that Holbrook. That was a new
I will tell
mixer.
you that this is a case that actually, Rich was my receiver, Judge Holbrook handled the case. I handled the receivership and foreclosure for KeyBank, a consortium led by KeyBank, of an 88-acre property in Hilliard, Ohio, that had a partially developed retirement community on it. And this was an asset that was hard to move. But at one point, I said to my client, you're incurring costs, you're paying the receiver, you're maintaining this property. Let's strip out the personal property, auction it off so you can get some value. We ended up getting about twice what we expected from it. It was an online auction run by Kiko, very smooth, and I'll tell you, it was fun every day to look at the site and see what the bids were. It was like the counter clicking. This was a place that had never been completed. So we stripped out cabinets, lockers, a generator sitting on a pad, and a gleaming commercial kitchen.
If it wasn't hooked up, it went.
Stainless steel, and the judge gave me a very wise ruling that if I could unplug it, or if I could unscrew it, I could take it. Because we had a fight about whether things were fixtures. But this kitchen equipment, never been turned on, some of it never even plugged in. And what the judge is referring to was a standing mixer, commercial mixer, a Hobart, that looked like 3CPO. And he wanted it very badly. The judge is like,
I love the cook, so.
But again, in that
100 loaves of
situation,
bread out of that thing.
in that situation, we had to explain to Judge Holbrook why the auction would be beneficial. So there was a whole process within that to get court approval to then do the auction. And then once we got the approval for the auction, he did a great job.
Also important to understand, there's 30 lawyers in the room representing various interests in this thing. So anytime a question was asked, you had about half an hour go by before you could ask your next question. So it got to be a little tedious.
I think we were part of that.
I represented you.
You did? Oh!
You were part of the consortium.
I was part of the consortium,
And you were
yeah.
very pleased with my work.
Was I?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Do we eat the check?
To Rich's point and to the judge's point is when the bank's going to look and we're going to go hire that third-party professional, we're really looking for you to help us to put that plan together. If you're looking for a banker to do it, that's usually not going to happen. They'll give you some sort of directive to it. You're going to rely on outside counsel. But when you walk in and you have a plan like that, that's mostly going to be what we're looking for third parties to put together.
And specifically, we want to see, where are you going to market this? How are you going to market this? Tell us all the publications. If this is, like I said, the racehorses or the school buses, show us your targeting market to those buyers. How many ads are you going to run? Where are you going to place them? Are you even doing direct mail? Does anybody do direct mail anymore?
Yeah. Sometimes when
He does? But yeah, show us your marketing plan and show us your sales plan. Is this going to be online? Is it going to be live? How are you going to do it?
Hi, my question is, as sellers and not auctioneers, what's your opinion on live auctions or online auctions, and what's your opinion on absolute auctions, and can you do an absolute auction when it has to be approved by the court?
If I were to ask for an absolute auction, I would go to Judge Holbrook ahead of time with one of my judges and say, look, we've tried. This thing is sitting here, taxes are accruing, dust is accruing, deterioration is occurring. I need to explain to him ahead of time why we need to go there. As to live versus online, it really depends on the asset. If it's real property, people probably are going to want to have a live auction. I think it generates more excitement versus smaller items are probably more amenable, in my experience, to online.
The online offers you more access for more buyers, and so that's always appealable to me because I know I'm getting better marketing going on.
I think as an ultimate seller, I've experienced both doing the online auction and experienced doing the live auction. I agree with Paulie, if it's real estate, it's probably better in a live scenario, creating the excitement. Sometimes the banks comes as bidders too, trying to protect themselves. I think you're going to get a lot of people when you get to absolute auctions, and I've done them both. I've done absolute and I've done minimum bid stuff. I've had more success with the absolute auctions. I've also had a few that didn't quite go so well in 2012 or 13. But I think that was just the quality of what the asset was. And we did a couple condos and some lots that just didn't quite sell for what we thought they were. They weren't going to sell on the open market with a broker anyway. So we're getting the price to do that. I think in the banks, you'll get a lot of pushback from doing absolute auctions because you got some crazy credit guy in the ivory tower saying, like, I can't afford to have that loss. But that goes back to when can you afford to have that loss when you can't afford that loss. So if I were in your shoes, I would ask that question. You don't want to do an absolute auction. You want to do a minimum bid auction, which you're afraid you're not going to get enough people there to the table. Is there a better time? Is there a better time at the end of the quarter? And of course, to the bank doesn't matter if it sells, April 1st, but boy, you better have that cash by June 30th, right? They got to see the money. That's when they recognize that particular piece of it. So if you think about your timing and quarters to do that, but if you're getting pushback on there, maybe there's an eventual time that helps you in an auction process of trying to sell that or convincing that it is better to sell it in absolute. And you got to be telling a case why it's better to sell it in absolute. It could be the type of property, it could be the type of interest you're getting. If you're not getting that much interest into it, doing the absolute auction probably is not going to be your best avenue.
One of the things that we've done a lot, and done a lot in Judge Holbrook's court, done a lot with Fifth Third, but not with Dave, is we have the banker doesn't want to sell absolute. They're afraid of absolute. Well, we all know the best way to sell it is absolute, right? And you can't sell absolute when it needs to have court approval, because there's that barrier, right? So you want absolute, you can't get absolute, the bank wants protection. So what we've gone to in the court is no minimum, no reserve, subject only to court approval. The bank then gets their backstop because it's not absolute. They can object to the sale if they want to. They object to the sale, the judge isn't going to approve it, but we still get to tell the buyers, hey, look, this is the best thing we can get to absolute. We can't be there because of the court situation. And more times than not, again, 100% of the time in the last 2 years, the bank's always gone along with the highest bid price, at least in our sales. You're gonna market it, no minimum, subject only to court confirmation.
Does the bank object by bidding then? Is that how you're saying it?
It depends on the situation. If it's foreclosure auction, the bank can bid. If it's a receiver sale, they can't, but they can object to the high bid.
You know, what's going to happen, the bank's going to stare a sum of money, they're going to realize, do I want to go back through this process again, or do I want to take the cash? My guess is they'll take the cash.
I've only been involved in, I was hired by the U.S. Bankruptcy Court to do an auction. But that was literally the only piece of court business I've obtained so far. And I found it hugely frustrating in trying to grow that business. And so I happen to know a couple of judges, and I've talked to them, and they say, well, see the lawyers. And I've talked to several lawyers, and there's 40 pages of them, and they get one every 10 years. And the trustees, I seem to, a lot of privacy issues or something there. I've tried following court websites. Is there a point, I guess, in the process of a distressed asset where you actively look for, I'm looking at timing, I guess, is there a point at which they actively seek out people such as ourselves who might be able to facilitate? And if so, the other thing I found is it seems like in my area, certain court systems have web systems that you have to pay to subscribe to. Is that something, I guess I'm looking for how, if you're in my shoes, what would you do, how would you do it, kind of a thing, to maybe get a little more plugged in.
Sure. First is the websites. I think the system you have to pay for that you're describing is PACER, which
Right.
gives you access to federal courts, including bankruptcy courts. In Ohio, we have 88 counties, and unfortunately, we almost have 88 different court docketing systems. Franklin County is excellent. I can go in with a case number. I can get an image of anything filed in the court. We file electronically. In Union County, up in Marysville, we have to mail them, and I can see a docket online that says it's been filed, but I can't get to it. I wish we had greater uniformity in Ohio. The other things we look at that sometimes we have to pay for is information at the Secretary of State level, primarily financing statements. Most states in the country are free. I believe you pay in Delaware, of course. Is that right? Delaware, maybe Virginia. So unfortunately, we don't have uniformity. Regarding getting your name out there, the point in the process when we look for an appraiser or an auctioneer, unfortunately depends on the case. You know, right now I have a case where we are trying to sell properties privately, consensually. I think when that process falls apart, I think it will, we're going to have to think about disposition of the asset in a public way, and that's when we'd be looking for someone like you.
As to the court records, the Chief Justice of Ohio wants to uniformly make a system across the state of Ohio. We probably have one of the better systems in Franklin County, but I agree, you go to a small county, Union, Coshocton, we talked about them earlier, they don't have the technology, you can't see it. I mean, you can see a document within seconds or minutes that it's being filed, you can see it online with us. We have a whole group of people that file that, but we have a major undertaking. So the Chief Justice would really like to see this be uniform across the state of Ohio. So they're working at it right now. There's special grants for the small counties. It's available to them to, as I say, get up on technology and try to work the databases. But always the problem is you've got decades of information out there that's interesting to you, prior sales, liens, other stuff out there that may not take a while to get onto the system. So you still have that lack of timing there.
There were a number of questions that came up, and I think we started touching on it, that were sent in through the Facebook forums. about how to win the business from the financial institution, from the law firm, from the court. What's the best way that folks in this room can be in front of you without stepping over that line from going from persistent to annoying? And where is that line?
I can start with the court. Trying to get in the door is going to be tough with us. You have to get through the hurdles of our staff. I would suggest strongly, and I did this when I was in private practice, get to know the secretary, the bailiff, these types of people, because they've got a better chance of getting in the door by getting to know them than you will just walking in and saying, hey, Judge Holbrook, I want to talk to you. Because that'll be a very short conversation. Okay? That's one way to go into it. Also, find out who the big receivers are. You know, they're the ones who do most of the transactions with the court. I always want that buffer in place so that I make sure everything goes smoothly. And I've got somebody to yell at when something goes south. So that's one way to look at it there. In smaller counties, you know, it's like politicking in small counties. Go to the fish fries, do the little local events, get to know the people, shake hands, kiss butt, whatever you want to call it. Okay, but that's how you get to know the small county judges.
I'm mic'd up. I will take a cold call and a meeting, and I want to know your experience. Bring some paperwork so I can see what you've been doing. Tell me what kinds of things you specialize in, if any. I want to know your certifications and your qualifications. Then, you raised a good point about being persistent. The best way to be persistent without being annoying is to put me on your email list. Rich is very good about regular updates on the law. He recently did a series on the new foreclosure law in Ohio. I appreciate getting those updates. It reminds me of him without being intrusive. So get your email list out there, send updates, tell people what you're doing. If you're auctioning a specific type of property, let me know and I'll remember, hey, Bob is very expert in this area. So email, I think, is a great way to keep in touch without being intrusive. And I agree with the judge's point, no disrespect to the judge. Some of the most important people in a courtroom are the secretary and the bailiff and the law firm.
I agree with you. When I was in practice, I had a list of all the bailiffs, their husbands, their
Some of them have
kids,
wives.
events, wives. Mean, aren't you? I'll remember that next time you're in front of me. No, I kept a list of everybody, and nothing like walking in and saying, how's your wife doing? Is she still in yoga class with so-and-so, or something like that, little facts? Because that shows that you've got some attention for them, and that translates into dollars for you.
Well, and in most counties, if you go to, most counties at least have a website for their common police court. It may not be very interactive, but every county I've ever looked at in Ohio, and I have not been in all 88, they will have a page for judiciary. And they will list not just the judge, but the judge's staff. See, and they will often have very helpful information, like for a criminal case, contact this person, and for a civil case, contact this person. And that way you can have a heads up if you're going into a courtroom to know, here's the staff, you know their name ahead of time. So educate yourself before you go in and ask somebody for something.
In my world, my group covers the nation, not just Ohio. And I think when taking cold calls, and I do like Paul, I'll take a cold call, take a meeting, want to understand what your specialty is, what you can offer, and then I think it's just some sort of consistent follow-up. I'm not ultimately, in my group, I let my people hire who they want to hire. That doesn't mean I don't necessarily influence it as well, too. Sometimes they're like, hey, you know, Joe, he's got some specialty to, you know, stand by. Right now I have a 183 or 186 foot yacht that we're dealing with in, I think it's a Monaco now, so it's coming across back, forcing it back across the
I think
seas.
we have to go inspect the collateral.
Absolutely, 6 cabins, it's fabulous. Well,
I know a guy.
You know a guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, might be able to do that. It needs a thorough inspection, but you know, the constant contact afterwards. It doesn't have to be, you know, following up every so often. But if you come to me to do it, I'll point you to my people saying, hey, if you're a specialty in oil field services, go talk to these two, or coal or heavy equipment. Or if you deal in medical equipment, say, I would go talk to my two or three people that are working specifically in medical equipment.
And understand something, in our business, we even refer to other counties. I can't tell you how many times I get calls from other counties asking me for receivers, for people to work cases. I know we just did one where I had a call from my former staff attorney who's in the PUCO, and we were able to hook up a receiver and a lawyer who I think are happy with me right now. I don't know. But, it does translate sometimes into just that one phone call can get you a nice paycheck.
Well, I had a phone call recently from one of the two judges in Delaware. He needed a receiver for now several cemeteries of all things and asked for recommendations. So the judges will call us from out of county.
And we too, we rely a lot on our outside counsel, especially if we're going into different areas that we have not typically do business in. Meaning we may have branches and stuff there, but those aren't at the level of sophistication needed, the high-end commercial stuff, transactions. And we'll go to our local counsel and say, Ollie, who do you have as a receiver? Who do you have as an auctioneer? Who do you have as a broker? Who are some of the references that you're looking to do?
Do any of you belong to any social or community service groups? As a Rotarian, I know that I interact with a lot of judges, funeral home operators, even attorneys, the bankers, and create a relationship with them in that direction, as well as like the reptile group and that sort of thing. Do you find that you work with people that you've already created a relationship with via personal relationships?
Not as much. I'm a Mason, and I'm a 33rd degree Mason. That doesn't mean much to you, but it's cool. So, I have some people out there that are Masonically oriented that I'll give more of a tend to listen to. That's not uncommon. We're social animals. That's how we develop our lives. And being a politician, I hate that word, you deal with the Rotaries. You deal with like Canal Winchester Rotary Club. You go down there, you make the presentations, you talk to them, you talk to the people in the community. That's how we get elected. Ohio's one of the few states that we vote for our judges. So you get out there in the community. So those organizations are all very important. At least that's what I see it.
So we have in our workout world, they have these some national conferences, and I think there's one up in Chicago, September 18th, 19th, something like that, or something the week before. And that's where a lot of my people will go to, and I'll go to this one in Chicago this year sometime in the winter. They have it in Fort Lauderdale. There's one for the energy purposes, is down in Houston. They schedule that in January, so they're very conscious of what motivates a banker to get out of Ohio. But we do have some of those associations, and when we go there, not too dissimilar from this, you have a lot of panel guests speaking. We have some people I've spoken on some of those panels before in doing it, and there's a lot of interaction, a lot of social activities. They want to take us out to dinner a lot and talk to us, and all that sort of fun stuff happens.
I am the chair of.
I'm trying to remember the name of it. There's three of them, and I can't think of the names of them. I sit here.
I'm the chair of the Banking Commercial Law Committee of the Ohio State Bar Association, so a statewide organization. And we do get a lot of referrals, and we have meetings twice a year and do law updates, and you hear what everybody's up to. And it is a good networking opportunity because I know, hey, so-and-so in Toledo knows how to do this. I need somebody up there. I'm also the vice chair of the Gryphon Guild Association, which is a nonprofit here in Columbus. The networking there is certainly less rigorous, but now and then I've had people say, hey, do you know somebody, or can you help me with this, another board member or something.
I've done work with some receivers and with lenders, not a whole lot of them, but what I found is that the hardest thing is to just get your foot in the door, okay? For me personally, once I got my foot in the door, if the lender asked me, can you do this? My answer was always yes. They tell me they need 24 hours security for 30 days, I can arrange that. They want me to ride with them to shut the coal mine down, sure, I'll go with you. If whatever they needed, I would make sure that was facilitated. So now, because I'll do anything that they need to have done, in addition to selling and marketing the assets, then they're willing to pay a higher commission, and they're willing to call me and say, I've got LED billboards on the south side of Alabama, can you have all these things crane removed and transported, and we take care of everything? It's yes, my answer is yes. So,
That's a great point, and I've gotten phone calls from all three of the folks that are up here asking me about things that they knew I didn't do, but they knew I knew somebody that did it somewhere. So, you know, you want to become a resource, and then it's easier to get that phone call because they'll call and say, "Hey, Rich, I need a building trashed out in Toledo. Who do I call? Give me 10 minutes. I'll call you back."
The coal mine, even though we're just going to be doing some heavy equipment out there, I ended up talking with the lenders council because this coal mine was going to be going through closure. There's a $400,000 closure bond, which would have been an asset of the banks as long as they can keep the state from going into closure, manage the closure themselves. So just anything that you can do to be a benefit.
That being a resource and knowing their
Creating
business
value
flows
for-
and yours and creating value.
Especially in our workout world, you're gonna get, some people get thrust in a position in the bank that perhaps were line officers, lending officers, and now they've been kind of kicked into and that happens, especially in the smaller banks, to do that, and they don't know what they're doing. So any value you create for them, smaller banks, it's gonna be a great opportunity for you to open the doors.
And it goes on because we use the case we were on. I called Rich one day, and the case had been with another judge for, 2 years before I had it. And I said, this is ridiculous, we're gonna sell it. And I called Rich up, and he ends up in the courtroom that day, and everybody walks in not knowing what's gonna happen. And I laid the boom on it, and we got Rich going, and we got it done. And I called Rich, I said, this is not gonna be fun, you're gonna have to deal with security, you're gonna have to deal with all these issues, and I've got 30 contentious lawyers. So,
29, I was one of them.
He had
there are 33 lawyers on the case, so you need to be in Group A or Group B.
you said you had 3 lawyers, a bunch of parties, and you didn't want to deal with it. It was delegate, get it done, take care of it, help make my life easy.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I got this, the motions for compelling were a year and a half old.
Motions for summary judgment.
Summary judgments were a year and a half old. There was some compelling out there, wasn't there?
I do not recall compelling anything. There was
Well,
nothing.
it wasn't yet. Kevin Humphreys was involved, so I think I'm still dealing with that case on the last leg of it. But, it was one of those situations where, Rich, I need this fixed. Do.
Well, in that case and in every case, I want one-stop shopping. I want to make one phone call to him or to you, and you have the network. In this case, we had an abandoned, partially constructed, massive facility. I don't remember how many square feet. We needed to, we call shrink wrap it. We needed 24-hour security. We needed a lot of things, and I didn't want to have to go running around finding all of them. I wanted him to do that. To the extent you don't have expertise, develop your network. So people like Dave and I and the judge can just make one call and it's done.
And tell them when you don't know.
Right. And the fact that you can go out and get this problem solved, bring your friends in. I don't care, as long as you solve my problem. So if you need somebody, if part of the assets are in one county, you need somebody there, put it together, be the broker on it, and fix the problem for us. Because, if you have this conception it's a glory job being a judge, run for your job every 6 years, piss off half the county every given day, get a hate mail and love letters all in the same day. I had the gambling case in Ohio, and I get 2 bags of mail a day, half of them where I kill you, the other half where I love you. So it's not an easy job. So if you can solve my problem, make my day.
Well, the judge raises a point that I find, particularly in smaller counties, where there may be 1 or 2 judges, and they're very, very visible. Years ago, we represented the state of Ohio in the liquidation of the S&Ls that failed in the light of the homestead failure. And some of those were in smaller counties. And I remember being in court in Logan County and basically telling the judge, there is no money to pay to these shareholders. There is no money left. And the judge took me in his office and said, you need to understand this. I see these people at church. My kids are in school with their kids. I can't make that ruling. I can't give you that outcome. And I said, here's the accounting. You know, if you want to read it out loud, do whatever you need to do, but you need to be conscious of how in their communities, some people are very, very visible. You're one of 17, but you're still very visible. When you're one of one, like I think Judge Frazier in Union County is the only one. There's 2 in Delaware County. Those guys have those men and women have no peaceful moment. And voters feel very entitled to give them their opinions on any little thing at any time, no matter how intrusive that is. And to the extent you can help with that or be aware of that, be aware that there's going to be publicity, be aware that there are going to be articles in the newspaper on physical cases, you can lend value.
I have a quick question. Do you guys, I know you've mentioned a couple times you like one-stop shop companies. And we're that way too with our company. We're an appraisal company. We sell real estate, assets, all that type of thing. But where do you draw the line on that with it being a conflict of interest? For example, I was recently court-appointed receiver on a case, and the appraiser, and the auctioneer, which I felt was very nice because I had no competition. But where does anybody ever have an issue with that? I was presented to be that by the plaintiff's attorney. So I mean, would a court, in a court, would a judge ever say, hey, I don't like that, or?
I would have issue with that, okay? There's an issue between fact issues, such as appraisal, versus operational issues, such as the receiver. Never the two shall be the same. You want an independent person doing your facts. Okay, so he may appoint you as receiver, but you better have a different person doing the appraisal because that avoids your whole conflict. So think of it very simply. If it generates a fact that comes out into evidence versus the operation, that's where the line should be cut.
And I think disclosure is key. You know, as long as everybody knows up front, you're much better off explaining everything up front. Everybody knows what you're doing, how you're doing it.
And that goes back, like the email thing you were saying earlier, and that's a great point I forgot to allude to. I get an email from Rich all the time too about all the changes in the law. So, you know, that email communication can always come in there and be a benefit.
Just to add on to that question, receiver and auctioneer together?
But see, those are operational.
Right.
Okay, you're not dealing with an independent fact that has to be brought before the court. Okay, I don't have a problem with those two working in concert. Okay, that's up to the receiver. Okay, but if it's like an appraiser, I have a problem there because of the potential conflict, because you're calling both ends of the bid. If you have like let's say it's got to be a 2/3 bid, you're calling both ends. You can't do it.
The thing about the receiver and the auctioneer, and I've been that guy more times than I can count. It starts with disclosure, so you're going to have to disclose to all the parties, and if there's an objection, there's probably going to be a hearing. The judge is going to just allow you to appoint yourself as auctioneer over an objection with no hearing. It's just not going to happen.
Oh, we got to have it here.
So the other thing is, if you're appointed as the receiver and you also want to act as the auctioneer, you absolutely positively have to be an expert in what you're selling. If I get appointed as receiver, and I did, okay, I'm from Chicago, I don't know anything about cattle, I don't know anything about agriculture. I know a lot now. When I got appointed as receiver, they needed somebody from 2 counties over that was dumb enough to get involved in the case. We ended up auctioning off all of the equipment and all the real estate. I don't know anything about agriculture equipment. I don't know anything about agricultural land. I don't know anything about selling cattle. We hired 4 different auctioneers in that case. None of them were me. But they wanted me involved because they knew it was going to go to auction, and they wanted the receiver to have that auction background, but not necessarily needing the experience to sell that asset. So we went out and found people that I knew from the industry to do that really good job. And we disclosed to the court up front, I can't be your auctioneer because I don't know these assets, but I can run the case. And there was that disclosure. We hired other people, And I think that's really what you have to be careful of if you're gonna be both the auctioneer and the receiver, is having that expertise in the asset. If you do, great. If you don't, hire your buddy and don't take a referral. Because there's another conflict.
When you do that, you become the master contractor, so to speak.
When you become the master contractor, so to speak, you get paid and pay them, or does the court pay each individual auctioneer? It depends on what the vendor to the receiver is doing, right? So in Ohio, in your standard receivership, the receiver gets paid an hourly rate. The real estate broker or the auctioneer is going to get paid whatever their contract says. Maybe it's commission, maybe it's an hourly rate, maybe it's a mix of both, maybe they're getting fees and labor and advertising, whatever it is, right? I'm sorry, I totally haven't seen the moment. Your question one more time.
No, with regards to your,
How we're paying the other ones.
Yeah.
So I'm not coming out of my pocket to pay you, right? So there'll either be money in the case that we use to pay the expenses. We get a receiver's loan, usually from, or we ask you to hold your fees and can you take them out of the proceeds of sale. Or we'll do maybe a de minimis sale that isn't going to require a lot of notice or a lot of time, and I'll go sell $5,000 or $10,000 worth of something and generate the money to pay for your advertising and your labor. And it's usually something I'll call the judge up and say, hey, I got this situation, they've got to do this. And we do it, come up with the money and pay it. But for commissions and real estate, it's back end closing for the most part.
There are a lot of things, well, I think in every case, how the expense is paid depends on the expense. For example, when we had Rich's receiver for this retirement community, he ran invoices. I think then we would get one big invoice breaking out, here are the utilities, here was the security cost, here's my hourly fee. The list is nodding because she actually prepared the invoices. And in that case, this was a non-performing asset. So we were getting regular monthly infusions from the lender. The cost of sale type of expenses, the commissions, the brokerage fees, are generally going to come out of proceeds.
When running a receivership, one of my pet peeves is some of the billings by the receivers. It doesn't take 3 hours to send a letter to the court. Okay? It doesn't take 3 hours to generate a bill. It's a computer generation of your time off the computer. I used to work for a living. Don't cheat. You cheat, you're going to get a rough time with me, and you end up in a hearing explaining your bill. That's one of my pet peeves, and there's a certain receiver that I mentioned earlier that was notorious for this. That was one of the reasons why he became notorious. Because
I have 3 active cases where I'm counsel for the receiver, so I'm listening very intently. How do you feel about no charge time entries? Do you like to see them? Do you not care?
They make me feel like I'm getting a deal. Let's be honest. If it takes you 30 seconds to do something, no charge it for 6 minutes like you do in your system. Oh man, that's great. I'm getting a great deal out of this lawyer for the receiver. I feel more comfortable because I have to answer to the creditors.
15 years, I never knew that.
No,
I just don't put the time on my bill.
I do a lot of no charge entries. This morning I sent my client, the receiver, 3 entries approving various fee applications. Once my secretary scanned them in, literally I hit the send button. But I wanted to know I did something for him and didn't charge it for it. So I'm a big fan of them.
I like people that don't charge me.
Yeah, and it's like a wonderful little tactical thing to do as a receiver too. If you make one phone call, just charge the estate $0 for that one phone call. Let's say you're on the phone a minute and a half,
And
give the court a freebie.
I'm a big fan of very descriptive time entries. Because think of me as your client, think of him as your client. You've got to convince us that you created value. Don't send me, this happened once. My husband is the CFO of a company. A law firm, not ours, sent him a bill for $25,000 for services rendered. He did not pay that bill. So think of every time entry as you're explaining to your client, to the court, to the creditors, here's what I did to justify the money I'm asking you for. It's a marketing tool, it's a status report, it really can be a very valuable way of communicating.
And it also keeps track of your time a little bit and using your entries. I don't know if there's, like, lawyers have a system for billing. I don't know if there's one for appraisers. I just don't know if it's percentages or whatever, but that additional information always helps us and gets you to avoid having to come in and explain it to me. So
It's pretty rare that we'll get questioned on a bill anymore. We've been doing it from the same judges for so long, but I can tell you that when we're acting as receiver and hiring other auctioneers, and we'll get the final reconciliation, and there's that commission in there, and it's a huge number, and there's absolutely zero backup documentation for what they did. We're looking at it and saying, okay, yeah, I can't just give this to the court in my reconciliation. You gotta give me something. So your documentation is important. Even if it's at the contract fee that has been agreed to, try to support it with something, because you're gonna probably get asked to. So.
Well, and hopefully you are all very computer literate and tech savvy and are good typists. I would never have thought the most important class I would take in my entire academic career, including 4 years of college and 3 years of law school, would be 8th grade typing. But it really is. And to the extent you are comfortable typing out those very descriptive entries, they will help you get paid.
Regarding expenses for the bank side and from the court side, as an auctioneer, I understand, I've done a lot of work for the bankruptcy court in Florida, and we get paid afterward. But marketing expenses obviously can run into the thousands of dollars. How do you handle from the bank side or from the court side marketing expenses for the auction company to market and promote before the assets are sold?
So when we look at those proposals, a lot of proposals I'll get are pretty, or like what I do see them, are pretty generic marketing expenses, one line. And I'll say $25,000. I'm going, okay, there's probably a little fluff in there, just thinking, because I don't have a detail of what you're actually going through. So from our perspective, for what people, when we were going through that process, is I want to understand $25,000 for what? I understand there's a margin in there. I get that piece of that part. So I'll probably negotiate with you if I'm not getting enough of the detail going, like, okay, it's 25, maybe it's 15, it's a 10. I don't know. We'll figure out what that fair number is. We want to make sure you get paid for services that you're providing to us, and making sure you're getting a fair shake and you do a good job with what you're doing.
as the court, most of our situations are the money doesn't come in until after you work. Okay? If we feel like a receivership and you need some front money on, that's when you talk to the receiver. Receiver can come to me and say, hey, I need this money out of the estate to pay for this, then we can deal with it. The problem is we're always paying backwards. And it makes it difficult on you guys because you have to front it out going into a situation where you may walk out of that whole day with this. So, you know, but if it's an ongoing estate, there may be assets in there to deal with, and naturally the receiver should ask for a hearing to have that money go on so that the creditor can come in and raise whatever hell they want to raise, and et cetera, et cetera.
Hopefully the banker can understand that when you're going, if you're going to the receiver, you're really asking the bank for money. I don't think Rich comes out with anything, it's just, we need this amount of money. You got to make them understand that we do it a lot of times. We'll fund that, a portion of it up front. Maybe it's a third, maybe it's 2/3. You know, negotiate with whatever you have to get that particular amount of money. But banks will, through the receivership, or if we're just working through the borrower, that money's funded. Sometimes the borrower, God forbid, they don't have the money, and we're funding it to them anyway.
The higher the amount, I'm sorry. The higher the amount of money, the easier it sounds strange, but the higher the amount of money, the easier it is to go to Dave and say, hey man, I need this, because he knows that I'm a small business, so, you know, I may not have $25,000 laying around to do advertising to solve his problem, But if I go to him for $1,200, he's probably gonna look at me like I'm an ass.
Well, and Rich has very cleverly made sure that we all know his wife and his daughter. It's like, do you want Savannah to go to camp?
Play the cards you're dealt.
I still make a better pie, Savannah, that's okay. We have this competition about who can bake and who can't. Another thing that I really want to stress to you guys, I want to see you guys as successful as possible. So anything I can do to facilitate it, if it's available, I'm willing to do, because your success relates to my success. So it's important that I can do what I can do. Sometimes I just don't have it to do it. And I may not have a bank willing to front it. Okay, and sometimes we just have to smile and move on. Okay, but geez, I hope you guys sell these for millions of dollars and make all kinds of money, because if you make money, guess who else makes money? My creditors. So.
Well, we have about 10, 15 minutes left. Are there questions that we haven't gotten to? Does anybody want to get something asked? We have a couple other topics that we can go through at the end, but we're here for you all.
All this talent, not one question? Jeez. I wish I could get lawyers like this.
Noted.
So,
I've never shut you out in courtroom.
Yeah,
one back there.
Well, one thing you've got to be very careful about in a courtroom, and there are times you're going to need to speak. You need to be prepared. You need to be concise. If that means you write it out and rehearse it ahead of time, because he is a very busy man. Get in, get out, tell him what you need and why you need it. But preparation is key, and I'm fortunate to work with big banks like Dave's and other big banks that will pay me to prepare. And if you're in that pipeline, people are going to pay you to prepare and to be ready.
And I'm not afraid to ask you an open court a question if I have it. And don't look at the receiver to answer for you, because I'm asking you. Okay? And she's right, time is of the essence. When I took over the commercial docket, I had 80-something cases that were neglected, and in 1 month I had everybody in to see me, and we were just moving and grooving, and we move on. But when you translate that kinds of numbers over a month, I didn't have very long to spend, so time counted. And it's important that you be able to answer, and there's nothing wrong with saying, I don't know if that's the honest answer. Okay? Then we can find out. But there's nothing wrong with that answer. Don't lie to me just because you think I want to hear a number. You're better to say I don't know.
Question, why do the bankruptcy rules between district courts change so much? In terms of the published rules between the U.S. bankruptcy courts?
Kind of local rules.
Excuse me, local rules.
Okay, I'm a state judge, and the one thing, I'm not afraid of anything but a bankruptcy judge. So, each court is responsible for their own, but that's a benefit of the bar. Anytime we sponsor a rule change, it's given out to the bar for commentary. So if we want to change like our receivership situations, it goes out in commentary. So you have to pay attention to that. Each one creates their own thing. Each one thinks they know more than everybody else. Okay? And that's it's just an unproven rule of the world, because everybody thinks they are the best. Okay? And as a lawyer, you deal with it. Polly addressed this earlier, saying there are 88 counties in the state of Ohio. And each one has their own different way of doing things.
And some have written local rules and some don't.
Yeah. And some of the rules are whatever the judge says that day. So, you get to know. That's why you need to know the little people. That's why you need to know the bailiff. You call them up, say, hey, I got this problem coming in. What's a good time to do it? What's convenient for the judge to hear me? If you've got a receivership issue. Most people want to work their calendars, because most counties aren't like ours where I have 30 things set in one morning. Okay? Most counties, they've got 3 things set, and the judge is worried about getting to lunch. So, talk to the people, find out.
Part of the reason, I think there are 2 reasons the local rules are changing very rapidly. One is technology. A lot of the changes I see coming through are responses to technology. How do you serve things? How do you file things? The other change I see, particularly in the Northern District of Ohio that encompasses Cleveland, is responses to the wave of bankruptcies caused by foreclosures and abandoned properties. And there are areas of my hometown of Cleveland that are virtually abandoned, Garfield Heights in particular. And some of those rule changes deal with expediting disposition of those properties. So they're not just Judge Morgenstern Clarence sitting up in Cleveland amusing herself by changing the rules of course constantly. I've never seen one that I disagree with. They're just hard to keep up with. So again, what I said earlier, before you go into any court, any county, look at the local rules, go online. Don't rely on that hard copy you may have. Go online because they do change.
Pertaining to the appraisals on personal property, do you want them to adhere to USPAP? And do you want the work filed with the company and then to the auctions? Do you
Okay,
require bonds?
I'm a stupid judge, what's you set for whatever?
Uniform standards for professional appraisal practice.
Well, we're looking for something that gives us a ballot, and if that's the professional standard, then yes. Okay?
That's the law.
The banks
Appraisal
will-
law.
Okay.
Well, it's depending on if you're gonna use it for credit decision or.
Yeah, the regulators tell us,
Explain to you.
all you
what
smart
we're
guys
doing.
gotta tell us how much
Around
something's
market.
worth. So we're required, the banks are required to get those and then have them reviewed by a third party. So for us to make some sort of credit decision, we're gonna have those, the appraisals done to those guidelines.
And as the court, I just get the appraisal that comes in, and then I ask my appropriate people, is this good? And that's what we do. So I didn't know what the concept was of the one on the outside here, I guess.
If I'm wearing the receiver hat, which I still wear quite often, I'm gonna know, based upon the judge that I have and the financial institution as the beneficiary of the receiver's work, what is acceptable to them. Now, if I'm in front of Judge Holbrook and you're my appraiser, I'm gonna probably tell you, look, I don't need a big report with USTAP. I need to know what it's gonna sell for, because that's what he cares about. If I tell him that, he's gonna know that I made sure that we got the right information. So that situation, I'm probably not gonna tell you gotta do all that extra paperwork. If it's the first time I've been working for a judge, or there's, the lender needs to make a different decision, or the law firm needs a specific format for a specific reason, then yeah, we're probably gonna ask for that format, but it's situational, I think.
It is very situational, and another factor is your relationship with your borrower. When you have a borrower, you often also have a guarantor. That guarantor has every reason to want to see that collateral value be maximized, because whatever the shortfall is on the guarantor. If you have a contentious borrower who's going to argue with you about the valuation of collateral, you're probably going to want something, with certifications attached to it. If you have a very friendly borrower and if the collateral value is sufficient, a back of the envelope may be adequate.
But at that point, regardless of how you're presenting it, I think the expectation is that you're gonna go through the same underlying work process to get to the value. It's just your reporting vehicle may be a little different.
You'll probably find this humorous more than anything, but a situation happened to me early in my career, probably over 30 years ago. I got subpoenaed to testify in court on a state that I had determined there was not enough assets to even think about doing an auction. Well, when I got subpoenaed, I got a check for $10. I had to drive an hour to sit in the courtroom because the attorney told me there was no more money than that to pay me. But there were 6 attorneys in that room and me. As getting summoned for $10 to drive an hour one way, was there anything I could have done to ask the courts that, if it was not an equitable situation?
I don't, Judge Holbrook would consider this, but say, look, here's my situation, I'm not being paid for this, you're taking my time. Can I do this by telephone? Can I participate by phone? The answer may be no, you need to be physically present, you need to be sworn. But do you swear people over the phone?
You can, Skype, whatever process now you can do. Plus, Rule 45 of the Civil Rules says you get paid mileage if you're out of county. So, and mileage is more than $10 on that.
Even 30 years ago.
Well, yeah, well, horses, clean so much, right? So,
Well, I told the attorney that I wasn't gonna cash a check, I was gonna frame it, and I did.
yeah, I don't blame you. That's probably the best investment there with it. As an expert, if you're there for an expert reason, you're entitled to be paid. Okay? And, you know, that's something either get someone to file a motion to quash the subpoena until they give you adequate money, or just go to them and say, hey, I need a little bit more to drive all this distance. But it's uncommon they would have an out-of-county appraiser to do something in county on the state, where they're multiple.
Well, the estate was in the county, but the
Okay.
court was in a different county.
That doesn't make
The
any
judge,
sense to me.
yeah. Huh?
Doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, it didn't make any sense to me either, but I had to go.
Okay. I understand subpoenas are scary things, you know.
Folks, we're about out of time, so is there one or two last questions that we can schedule in and then wrap up?
I had an unusual situation that came out recently in a bankruptcy case that I was dealing with, and I wonder if anybody else in the room that deals in bankruptcy auctions may have had a similar situation. So we're required to carry a $100,000 bond to do bankruptcy auctions. And we've certainly had auctions that exceeded $100,000, but I never had a bankruptcy administrator or a trustee that brought that to my attention after the auction was over. But this one particular case, we did a manufacturing facility. We'd estimated the proceeds would be around $100,000. What was unusual about this case is the judge wanted the opportunity to schedule a hearing to confirm a personal property auction, which is real unusual. Normally when we're selling personal property, we show up the next day, collect the funds, disperse the assets, and then we turn it over to the trustee. In this case, it was going to be about a week before the confirmation took place, so we had a delay in collecting the proceeds and picking up the personal property. In this particular case, the sale did bring $100,000, it brought over $500,000, which put everybody in a state of shock and made everybody pretty happy. We had 4 days of pickup. On my second day of pickup, I was notified by the bankruptcy administrator that we didn't have adequate bond to conduct the auction. Has anybody ever been in that situation before? So no one could answer the question is, what would you like for me to do? Stop collecting the proceeds? You can't just pick up the phone and call and get a $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 bond without a little bit of paperwork. They don't just issue them like they do a $10,000 bond. And the only solution that I came up with temporarily was to sweep my account. I already had far more than $100,000 in my account, so at that point we started sweeping the account and sending it to the trustee. But has anybody else ever encountered a situation like that where it doesn't matter how much bond you buy, if you happen to do an auction that exceeds that amount, have you ever been called on the carpet on it?
It's a positive result. I'm trying to figure out why they would even bark at you. You know, I mean, it's like, oh, happy surprise.
We routinely end up in cases where cash on hand is in excess of our bond, but honestly, nobody's ever called us on it. I think before you came up with your solution of, let's start sending it to the trustee, that's exactly what I would have done. I'd start wiring it, make sure my account is under 100 and I'll be good to go. And yeah, that would be my response. All right, you want me to tell everybody we're not selling it and not collect the $500,000, or what do you want me to do? The answer is going to be no, collect the $500,000 and sweep it to the trustee.
That was a stupidly slavish adherence to the bond requirement. That would be very unfortunate. What I have found, I've never had that instance, but I have had success. Again, we've got 80 counties, 88 different ways of dealing with things, and in Delaware County at the time, the down payment at a foreclosure sale of real property was 10%, and you couldn't credit bid. So I'm representing the lender on a property appraised at $9 million. And I said, nobody's gonna walk in with a certified check for $900,000. And I went to the court and they were very accommodating about modifying the minimum bid requirement to cover estimated costs and delinquent taxes, which was really the purpose of that payment. And so I found that once you go in with a reasonable business solution, judges are very reasonable business people, and once you explain to them, if we proceed in this way, it's going to chill baiting, it's going to hurt the ultimate outcome, I find they're very amenable to varying what may be the local rule or the local practice.
Make us comfortable.
We are officially out of time. I think if there are any other questions, please feel free to come up and ask them offline.
Well, thank you all for coming out.